With my ZBrush sculpt finished, in this video I'll show you how I go about starting to convert it back into clay. Hi, John here from Clay Polygon, showing you how I make the costumes and props on the shows you love. If you're new, please consider subscribing. What do we need to do next? Well, we need to give our model some thickness, and then we need to chop it up, ready for 3D printing. Same method I've used for my Davy Jones hat. I've taken the main surface of the mesh and extruded it inwards by a few millimeters. Next, I've used some simple cube booleans to divide it up into printable sections. I've made a point to leave the face as one piece and each ear as whole pieces. As these are the most important parts, I don't want to have to worry about bad seam lines or joins across them. I've spent a few pounds, sent it off to be 3D printed. It should take about a week. It'll be much better quality than what my home 3D printer can do. I can't wait to see it. The 3D print arrived yesterday. I wasn't actually expecting it until Monday, so yay. Before we get into it, I wanted to show you some close-up videos of the 3D print itself. It's a really good print. I'm very happy with it. The material is quite funky actually. It's a bit psychedelic in person. So you won't be able to appreciate the forms and the shapes and really until it's in clay. But yeah, it's a really good print. Right. Let's super glue it together. Where to start? Yeah. Yeah, where to start? That bit, because you can put that bit flat. Dare I say it, these should go together really easily. There's a lot of waiting about when you're holding two bits of print gluing together. It's thrilling this, isn't it? Car. How many cars can I count whilst I'm gluing this together? It will stick. It will. So because this was modelled in ZBrush, and I just kind of hid the badly modelled shoulders just to get the bust printed. It comes with the jaggedy, polygonal, decimated edge on the print, which I think is great. I love those details. Not bad at all. Now all I want to do is go get my Fedora and put it on this, but I'm going to wait until it's clay. I'm going to resist. I'm not even going to do it off camera, I'm going to wait. You know what I'll do? I'll shove some Yoo-hoo in the gaps and let it dry, cure, dry, set, whatever glue does, over a few hours. But until then, print, ready to be moulded. Before we continue, 10. I counted 10 cars. Here's a bit of old versus new comparison. It looks a lot better, doesn't it? Before I dunk a load of silicone on, one of my tips is to turn the model on its side. Any model like this, especially a bust, if you apply your bulk of silicone with the bust upright, there is a very high chance you'll end up with air bubbles in the overhangs. The eye sockets, the ears, nose, basically all the important bits. I've weighed out a small amount of RTV25 and I'm dribbling it unthickened across the face. Then working it into the details with my fingers. Blow directly or use a straw to really... This is to release any air bubbles that may have formed from just this small layer of silicone. If I didn't do this, as I have said, you will almost certainly end up with air bubbles. With the face on its side, there are no overhangs and the air bubbles rise vertically. This technique guarantees a cleaner, hassle-free mould. Once cured, here's a better shot of that thin layer of silicone. It's got some good cured drips, hasn't it? It doesn't matter, we can easily remove them before we add more silicone. It does look a bit of a mess, doesn't it? I think I should have tidied up my bench before I filmed this. Now my thin layer of silicone is on, and I've got my details, I can start to properly mould the bust. I buy this plastic shim from Industrial Plasters, linked down below. As you can see, each strip is about 500mm long with 15mm kind of half spheres. These are very useful for creating location points for any two-part mould. You just cut the strips up, sellotape them together around the midsection of your bust, like this. It's quite awkward to get it flat with the model, so you need to use a bit of sellotape here or there, just to keep it where you want it. If I was doing this as my, final mould, I would take a lot more time, a lot more care, get it really neat and perfect. But because this is just a quick one-off to convert this print into clay, I'm not spending too much time over it. This is good enough. So, I've weighed out my silicone, RTV25. As you can see, I'm using the yellow catalyst, which is the fast catalyst. You need 5% to silicone weight. As always, give it a really good mix. I can't overstate that enough. Now, I'm using a thixotropic agent here, linked down below, to make it, to give it the consistency of, I like to say, thick custard. The type that just hasn't had enough milk in it. You need about 2% total weight of this, no more. Thixo does take a few minutes to kick in. Once you've mixed it, be patient and wait for a moment. Don't just put more in because you don't think it's working. That's the worst thing you can do. Trust me, you'll end up with silicone that's so thick, you'll never be able to spread it anywhere. Again, give it a really good mix until it remains on your mixing stick and doesn't drip off. You know when it's ready. So the way I work... Actually, my wife came up with this, so I guess this is her tip. It works really well. Get a clear plastic bag and start to decant your thickened silicone into the bag. Make sure, you get all of it. Then if you seal the bag up and hold it as if you're about to ice a cake, like this. Tighten it up, get some scissors and chop off one small corner. Hopefully ones that are a bit sharper than my pathetic excuse for scissors. It did take me a few attempts. Cut off one corner and you can use it as a piping bag. What I do before I slap the majority of the silicone on, I pipe a few small dots of silicone where the shim touches the model at strategic positions around the edge. At the same location on both sides of the shim, 5 or 6, depending what's needed. And this makes sure the shim will stay in place once those small dots of silicone have cured. So then, when you are putting on your massive load of silicone at a later date, you don't have to worry about any issues. Smooth it off with your finger so you don't get any air bubbles. And close up, it just looks like this. Nice, small, neat dots of silicone, and let it cure. You can see it from both sides here. It will help you massively when you come to do your proper batch of silicone. The silicone is now cured and I can remove the tape holding the shim in place. As you can see, the shim is nice and held, it's rigid. You don't have to worry about that moving when you come to put the rest of your silicone on. Once again, RT25. I think for my first bag I measured about 400 grams. I used a kilogram of silicone in total for each half of the mould this time. Fast cure yellow catalyst, 5%. Again, give it a really good mix, and 2% thickening agent. Because I took the time to pipe those small dots of silicone to hold the shim in place, I'm able to lay my bust on its back. This makes applying the silicone to both halves much easier. Decant your silicone into another clear bag, yeah, preferably on camera, John. Seal it up like a piping bag and once again chop off the corner. My method is to then pipe lines all across the model. I can assure you there are many benefits to working like this. You are almost guaranteed an even coating of silicone, the thickness of your piped line. You won't miss a spot or over silicone another area. The force of the piping really pushes the silicone into all of the holes and details, giving you a much better chance of an air bubble free mould at the end of it. Next, I like to use a clay scraping tool, but any old credit card or similar will work. Smooth off the piped lines to give yourself a nice smooth finish. The smoother the better. Turn the model around and do the same on the other side. I think this batch had slightly less Thixo in it. As you can see, it's just a bit more runny. It's really yellow, isn't it? Later on, my mix isn't quite so yellow, so maybe I overdid it with the catalyst here. It doesn't matter. Once again, get your clay tool and smooth out your piped lines. I won't bore you with the rest of the mould. Let's just say when it was cured, I turned it over and I did exactly the same on the back. Here's the cured mould. I'll admit, it's not the best mould I've ever made, but it doesn't matter. It's a quick thing. I have trimmed the edges with a Stanley knife to get a cleaner edge back and front. I have also piped some raised plugs at strategic places across the mould surface. These just allow the fiberglass shell to sit better on the silicone. Yeah, mould done. Next, let's get on and fiberglass it. Lay the model on its back. We'll fiberglass one side, let that cure, then turn it over and we'll do the other side. Same as how we approached the silicone. First, I like to do a thin layer of gel coat. It just helps to get the details before we lay on our thick 450 mat. I buy my gel coat and general purpose resin from cfsnet.co.uk, link down below. I've got a stockpile of cheap resin brushes as well, again from CFS. Mix in our catalyst and brush a thin coat all over our silicone, including the plastic shim. Moving on to the fiberglass, as I said, I use 450 GSM chopped strand mat. The way I work, 450 needs a few minutes of soak time before it becomes workable. I like to brush 2 pieces with resin, let them soak it in whilst I'm working on the last 2 pieces I brushed. This of course doesn't work at the start. You kind of need to get into your rhythm, but as a technique, I highly recommend it. In my early days, I used to just have at it, full steam ahead. Not really understanding that the mat needed the extra time to soak up the resin, and once it was soaked it became stickier, better at clinging to any potential overhangs or undercuts you were trying to fiberglass. My early fiberglassing was a mess. My technique now uses much less resin and is therefore much less messy. Here we go, I'm in my rhythm now, 2 pieces soaking whilst I'm working on the last 2. Cover the entire half in a layer before you do a second. 2 layers is enough. Make sure you pay special attention and get a good covering on the plastic shim. Let that half cure. In these temperatures it only took half an hour. Turn it over and do the same on the other side. This side will be easier as you'll have a stiffer shim to fiberglass against. The first half can sometimes be tricky as the outer edges of the shim have no support. I find myself supporting the underside with one hand whilst fiberglassing with the other. Same again, 2 good layers. Make sure you get a good shape around those raised plugs. It will just make it much easier sitting the silicone back in the shell later. Once it's done, let it cure. Okay, let's cut that here. We'll leave trimming the fiberglass and getting the clay back out for next time. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.